Before I started traveling, I thought that the human race as a whole, could and would turn on itself at any moment. Venal, petty, cruel, arbitrary, and it's true that all of those things exist in this world. But I meet mostly pretty nice people doing the best they can, often under very, very difficult conditions. There are a lot of gray areas in travel, but I think that on balance, the world is filled with people doing the best they can, who love their kids and, would like to, put on a clean shirt every morning and live their lives with a little dignity and have access to food and water, hope, just like everybody else.
Welcome back to Turn and Burn. Up until this point, our guests have been in major metros across the country. Today, we are visiting a community in West Virginia and a chef owner whose Appalachian ancestry and wild ride adventure seeking fuel his current passions. I can think of no better way to exemplify Matt Welsh than to share the words of the man himself from his website. Here at the Vagabond Kitchen, we prepare what we know, the recipes and traditions that were passed down to us by our ancestors. But the way we approach our food has been inspired by the places we've visited, the people we've met, and the food we've shared. Welcome to the Vagabond Chef. Thank you so much for joining us, Matt.
Thank you for having me on, guys. This is great.
Pleasure's all ours, sir. All ours. How did you come up with the Vagabond Chef? How did you grow that concept and that brand? And what are you looking to do to kind of extend that as it relates to the restaurant?
Yeah, so I came up with the Vagabond Chef really just through my deep desire to travel and see as much of the world as possible. I mean, really at the end of the day, this whole experiment is about trying to die a happy death. I want to leave this earth with no regrets. I really want to explore and learn and see a lot of things. So I was a vagabond a long time before I was the Vagabond Chef. And it was through visiting friends and traveling all over the country that actually a good friend of mine's grandma gave me that name at first, just Vagabond. Because after visiting, she was talking to her grandma actually, and her grandma asked her, what does your friend Matt do? And my friend's like, well, he kind of travels around for a little while and until he runs out of money, and then he gets a job and he saves up his money and he travels around again. And my friend's grandma says, oh, he's a vagabond. And I just always thought, like, how cool that she spun it in like a positive light. It wasn't like he's a shiftless bum or anything like that. And when I was cooking at a cross country ski lodge in Idaho, and I was really feeling like I needed to get out there and do something different. I've been there for almost 5 years. And I put together a love of motorcycles and culinary and travel and writing and photography. And I came up with this concept to travel around the country and check out different restaurants and ask them about, what are y'all doing? How are you doing it? Why are you doing it that way? And I was talking to a good friend of mine who I kind of see as like my motorcycle mentor. He's this real gruff dude from Pittsburgh. And we met when I was cooking in Chicago. And I was telling him about this concept. And he's like, oh, shit, you're going to be like the Vagabond Chef. I was like, there it is. Perfect. So 11 years later, here we are.
It's really an important thing to have a story, I think, behind your brand. And that's one of the things that I also love about the way that you're presenting the restaurant, that the way you present food is like a story. The way that you've put together the menus themselves is like a story. All of that is brand. And so as soon as I kind of came across the Vagabond Chef as a brand, I just totally fell in love with the concept, not just for the kind of scrappiness of it, but also just how absolutely elegant and beautiful it is. It has a YouTube channel where he does like cooking videos. There's a documentary on there where you can see more about Matt's background, which is pretty cool, and the environments that he's been in. He's also on Facebook and Instagram as the Vagabond Chef, so you can look him up on there. And we're going to tag all of that in the descriptions and things for this episode. And I just absolutely love that. As a brand, I think it's just brilliant. So
well,
kudos
thank you.
to you.
Yeah. I really appreciat that. And I didn't have a plan. I'm not super strategic. I fumble around. I leap before I look. I figure it out as I go. I certainly didn't expect to be West Virginia's prodigal son. It was not part of like, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do this. It was just how things ended up. But I feel so grateful that I got to come back home to my community and bring the experiences that I've had everywhere else in the world here.
You had originally done kind of a modernized Appalachian cooking concept. Can you talk a little bit about the evolution of that and how that worked in the small community? Can you talk a little bit about Wheeling, if you would?
Sure. Yeah. When I first opened up, I kind of just thought, oh, I'm gonna make the food that I've seen in my travels, and so it was extremely eclectic. People would always ask, like, what's the Vagabond Kitchen? What do you serve? I'm like, good food. It's all good. Trust me. But after being home for like a year, I really started to lean harder into my Appalachian roots and researching more of like what sets our culture apart and what makes it special and unique, and really making that the primary filter to put all of the food and all the menu items through. So sometimes I feel like a culinary anthropologist, and I'm researching old cookbooks or personal histories to bring dishes into the present. And sometimes I'm putting spins on things, like, we'll infuse flavors, Appalachian flavors, into world food to make it a little more interesting and just to bring it back home again, because one of the best definitions I've ever gotten for what makes Appalachian food is from a chef, Tim Urbanic. He's like the godfather of farm-to-table food in this state. And he told me that Appalachian food is the food of immigrants making what they were used to eating with what they could find, forage, or make, right? So everything's game. We've got people from all over the world living here now. So I look at indigenous food. I can utilize Mexican food, Asian cuisines, like anything is open. So I just utilize that as a guiding principle in which to make a dish. We are a small Rust Belt city. We lost our industry in the 80s, like so many places in the Midwest. And our downtown kind of died out 20 or 30 years ago when the mall opened up. We all know that story. I think we're all around the same generation, so we've got like the mall rat thing going on, right? And that sucked the life out of downtown, and it's always just kind of been trying to recover since then. So when I opened up my place, I wanted to put it in downtown Wheeling because I had hoped that I could draw people into downtown. So all of the things that I do with West Virginia State Parks and the Food and Farm Coalition and the farm to table dinners across our region, everything I do, I try to draw people in. Like, I want them to come to West Virginia. I want you guys to be like, man, we got to check West Virginia out.
I already want to come to West Virginia.
It sounds beautiful. I heard there's great food there. So if I can bring them into West Virginia, bring them into the Upper Ohio Valley where I live, bring them into downtown Wheeling, bring them into my restaurant. Like, all of these are little tiny wins. Mm-hmm. And if we can get people intrigued and interested and get some buy-in, then I think we can do a lot more with that. West Virginia is a very impoverished state. We're last in a lot of different polls that we have some self-image issues. We certainly have a marketing problem across the nation. People tend to think poorly of us. So if I can get out there and show people we're more than that, not to say that those things aren't true. I'm not going to lie to you. We have our problems just like anywhere else, but there's a lot more to us than that. And it's worth you putting a little effort in to come check it out.
Chef Matt, as many of our listeners know, in this industry that we're in, family time can be hard to come by, right? Because let's face it, the more you're in the restaurant, the more you'll learn about your guests. How do you balance, obviously being the Vagabond chef and then also having your restaurant and then traveling as much as you do?
That is a great question that is way easier to ask than it is to answer. It is really, really hard. I said for years that I could not do what I do if I had a family. And since then, I've added the family. We're expecting our second son here in a couple of months, my wife and I.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And I also have, I have 3+ jobs now. I don't just run the restaurant. I also am the executive chef for West Virginia State Parks, and I work with the value-added products program for the West Virginia Food and Farm Coalition. So I've added more to that and added a family in, but I refuse to be one of those entrepreneurs or chefs that doesn't see his sons grow up. I refuse. That's priority number one. Everything else, I just have to figure it out, and it's not easy. It means I give up sleep sometimes. And part of it was, we talk about work-life balance, and I think that's just bullshit. I don't think there is one. And at least for me, I made my work what I love. So I just don't have, I don't have recreational activities. Like I work or I'm with my family, and that's really about it. And maybe that's not sustainable like forever, but I think it's sustainable for a longer period of time because I love what I do. I don't buy into that whole, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. I think that's bullshit too. It's still a lot of work, but it's fulfilling work. And the best thing about being a chef, in addition to being a vagabond, is I'm fulfilled in a way that I never felt before. So it's just, it is incredibly hard. But there is no better battle to fight, right?
I can tell you this as well, Chef Matt. It helps when your significant other understands and is able to be that rock behind you.
I don't know how you could do it without that. I mean, I think that's why we have so much divorce in our industry, and a lot, mental health issues for that matter. I mean, if you're in a partnership with a partner who doesn't understand you, you're doomed to fail. And we have to break out of the expectations of banker's hours. We don't work Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. That's one of my favorite memes is the one of Batman slapping Robin, and he's saying, happy Friday, and the guy slaps him. He says, I work in the service industry. I don't get a weekend. I don't get nights off, and I try really hard to be in the moment. And when I'm with my family, I try really hard to only be with my family. I don't always succeed at that, but I really, really try hard. And I try when I am working to really be efficient and get the work done.
Whatever the stereotypes are about entrepreneurs, there is always some kind of cognitive separation between people that have that in them, right? To do something aberrant and a little bit risky and all of that, and people that either don't have that luxury. Sometimes I feel like that's how they feel, right? Like, I don't have that luxury. I don't care if you have a staff of 20 or a staff of 500, if you are actively involved in that business development piece of it and in the brand building and all those things, right? Then you're wrapped up with it. It's in your head,
right. Right.
And it's very difficult to distance yourself from it, because sometimes distancing yourself from it makes you have better ideas too. Like, I stepped away from it and now I'm like,
right.
Oh, I want to do that when I get back. I'm sure just so exhausting for people that aren't like that, but it's so like energizing for people that are,
right.
it is a little selfish, but it's also, like you guys said, it requires having a support system that can let you be a little crazy every once in a while.
No doubt.
Why wouldn't I want to bet on myself? Who would I rather bet on, right? And I know who I am, more than anyone else. So I'm always going to bet on myself first, right? And I think that's part of it too, having that type of mentality where I don't care what happens, I'm not going to fail. That's just the reality of it.
Right. And I really do think, Fred, that it's a matter of knowing yourself. And if you're the type of person that this is the life you need to live, then you've got to figure out a way to get the resources you need to live that life. Yeah. But if you're not, I mean, I wish that I could just be a dishwasher and smoke pot every day and just like punch a clock and be done and not have the stress and all that. But that's not who I am.
Yeah.
And I would never feel fulfilled doing that. I would go to my deathbed an unhappy, regretful person. So I can't do it.
I wish I was stupider, right? Like, I wish I could just be stupider, to our credit that we feel confident enough in our own capabilities and our intelligence, to be able to say, this is about problem solving. This is about strategy. I don't care what you say about your brand, right? It is about strategy, because even if it's not doing things that are wrong, or that don't work for you, like, that's still strategy, right? Like, if being able to make decisions in an instant is such an important skill for entrepreneurs and anybody in a leadership position to have, for sure.
And it's not for everyone, let's just be honest. It's really not. Being able to wear or having to make decisions on multiple hats, that's not for everyone. And it takes a certain type of person to do it. So
and that's fine.
Phone, right?
If it's not for you, then don't do it. Yeah. I'm sure you guys have had this experience where people will come up to me and they'll say, oh, so-and-so says I make really great chili, and like, I should open up a restaurant because I make really great chili. And I'm like, no, you fucking should not. You should keep making really great chili and be everyone's favorite at the family reunions and at the tailgate parties with your chili. Yeah. But if you can't go to sleep at night, if you can't tie your shoes, if you can't have sex with your partner because you're so obsessed with the idea of opening up your own restaurant, you should still really fucking think about it. It's probably not a great idea. But,
Yeah.
you know, if you can't avoid it, if it's like breathing and you have to do it,
Yeah,
God help you, man. Go for it.
absolutely.
So how do you bring then the vagabond quality that is your core, right, to these other projects, like the West Virginia Parks Association? Like, how did that come about? How did they tap you? Like, how do you be yourself in an institutional type environment?
I am so grateful that I've got these other positions, and that's what they want. They want me. They don't want me to be somebody else. They don't want me to act like somebody else. So I've been doing farm-to-table dinners. I'm connecting with cooks across the state and the region for years, doing it all on my own dime, making hardly any money, but it was something I believed in, and I just wanted to do it. And then part of the pandemic, what came out of that was our West Virginia State Tourism began this chef ambassador program. And they asked me to be a chef, one of their first runs of chef ambassadors for the Northern Panhandle region of West Virginia. And I think it was about a year or two after that, I was approached by Deputy Chief Paul Redford from West Virginia State Parks. And he said, hey, we would love to have you come speak at our restaurant operators meeting this fall. Like, yeah, sure. I go speak places all the time. I love, you know, talking to students and adults and whoever wants to hear about it. Like, let's tell a story. Let's get into it. So we were talking about what would be the best thing for me to discuss in that meeting. Like, what do you want to hear? I don't want to regurgitate stuff that would be boring or that you already know. And as we were breaking down some of the challenges and the goals of the state parks, I said, you know, it would be so cool if I could help you address this at a deeper level. A 1-hour talk is only going to do so much. And I love our state parks. I love that wilderness and the out of doors. And it'd be so cool to be able to bring those loves together. Like I feel like that's my ace in the hole, is when I can bring the loves together. Right. And they were like, well, you know, we have had a food and beverage consulting position in the past. That position hasn't been filled for several years. And before you knew it, here we are. And then they went and gave me the ridiculous title of executive chef of West Virginia State Parks, which is just insane. And I told him, I was like, I'm just some asshole on a motorcycle. What are you guys thinking? You know, and then when my wife and I honeymooned in Paris, she kept introducing me as the executive chef of West Virginia. And I said, no, honey, just the state parks. And she said, they're the same thing. And I said, well, I can't really argue with that. And it was the same thing with the Food and Farm Coalition. They are a nonprofit organization. I should say we are a nonprofit organization where we really help fill the gaps between profit and nonprofit. We work with farmers. We work with, we have a great program called Snap Stretch, where folks who are getting SNAP benefits, you know, like the old school would have been welfare stamps or whatever, they can get more for their SNAP dollars going to a farmer's market and buying local fresh food. Awesome. So it really incentivizes these folks to do that, which is fantastic. And one of the programs we work with is value-added products, which is like a low entry point West Virginia, because we can ship you, maple syrup and honey and infused jams and all that sort of thing, and it's shelf stable. So it's easier to get it out there than just wild ramps or pawpaws or cucumbers. And again, it was like I'd been on the board for a long time. They asked me if I'd step off the board and take this position because they wanted me to do what I do well and connect with people and talk to people. And it's all about stories and sharing our stories, because we can all connect through that. It doesn't matter what our background is or our demographic is, and it's instantaneous in the culinary industry, right? Like, if you guys, like, you meet someone in the culinary industry and you're like, fuck, we're best friends now. I want to get a shift drink.
I mean, you either speak the language or you don't. I mean, I was in it for a very small period of time, and I still feel like I can sometimes speak the language. That's why I'm doing this goofy show with Fred, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's a brotherhood, right? It's not for the faint of heart. It's not for everyone. It takes a certain type of person to do this. So it's a brotherhood at the end of the day,
And I love that it's a meritocracy. Yeah. And it doesn't matter who you are. Can you perform? Can you do it? Can you make it happen? If you are, you're in. And I think it's like the island of misfit toys.
Yeah. Okay.
But we all fit together, and even though we're really weird and individualistic, and getting a bunch of chefs together is like herding cats, but somehow it works. Attention is currency these days.
There you go.
And to grab people's attention, and you got to pull them in. You got to show them that value, and it's created this really interesting situation now where being good in culinary, being a chef, being someone that is invested themselves and their skills into the culinary, the service industry, it feels almost like how it used to be with artists. Like like Jean-Michel Basquiat talks about how it was his way out of the gutter, and like he was a homeless person crashing in I can't remember which park it was in Manhattan, and his painting got him out of that. And in a lot of ways, I think that the current state of the culinary industry in this country, that is a way for people to get out of that. In a lot of impoverished areas, it's the military industry. But I think it can also be service. And I think a lot of people don't appreciate that as much as they should, because I know around here, it's almost like, well, yeah, you're going to do that until you find a real job, is kind of the attitude.
Yep.
But no, you put your ass into it, you can really make something of yourself. But you got to put your ass into it. With the military, they make sure it happens, right? Like they don't give you a choice. This is very self-driven, and it's very much about you putting that personal investment in. But I think the opportunity is there in a way that it wasn't a generation ago, for sure. Maybe even 20 years ago.
The way the media kind of portrays chefs from all the different shows, and I mean, you turn on Food Network now, I mean, you can watch it for 12 hours and have a different show in every hour, right?
Yeah,
right.
right.
I think that's more so of the awareness that has been, I guess, placed upon what we do versus, like you said, 10 years ago, no one really knew the ins and outs of a restaurant, but now you can turn it on and just get a up close and personal view, right?
Yeah, I think there's kind of like a double-edged, or maybe two prongs to that, like, because I think one prong is definitely Food Network and celebrity chefs like Guy Fieri and Mark Murphy and Robert Irvine and all those guys. And then I think the other side of that is Bourdain and what he did.
Yeah.
And, they're very different approaches, coming from a similar background maybe, but I don't think one would exist without the other. I don't think we would be where we are now without both of those influences coming together to make the situation ripe for what we're seeing. And it is high drama. It is dangerous. There's sharp things and fires and fucking personalities, like there is a lot of fodder there for reality TV, which is just cheaper to produce than shows that are written by people who actually care, so it's like, it's one of those perfect storm scenarios. But I think those of us who are passionate and invested into the industry, we can use that, and that's a jumping off platform for us, and we can tap into that a little bit. And people do understand a little bit more. And so they have an idea maybe of what like mise en place is, or what certain things on the menu might be.
What is your take on the state of farm to table scratch kitchens as it relates to the products now that are being offered just to kind of offset that labor? What do you think the state of those restaurants are?
I don't think it's ever been a harder time to be a chef-driven restaurant. I've known a lot of people, just like we all have, that have been driven out through the process of trying to survive the pandemic and this post-pandemic world and what that means. And I guess it's different in different parts of the country and certainly in different parts of the world. But I know around here, it's really hard to get people to understand the value of a curated menu, of the effort and the skill that goes into preparing these dishes. And one of my core concepts or beliefs is that everyone deserves to eat good food. So we're not fine dining. We're casual. You can come wearing shorts and a tank top. I mean, I don't want to shoo people away because they're not dressed properly. I don't like that. I don't like the snootiness of fine dining. But I like the quality. And at an ultimate level, for me, it is about quality. And I do understand why places go to that freezer to fryer concept. I get it. But you're selling your soul. You're no longer, you're just a commodity at that point. You're just a regular ass business. There's no soul in it. There's no heart in it. Like anybody can do that, and I think I understand that it feeds the convenience need that we have in this country. And I understand that everyone needs to eat, and, you know, sometimes you can't make that extra effort, and that's not reasonable. What I think people need to hear is that they need to put in the extra effort to make time to support those types of restaurants in their communities, because they are the backbone and the life's blood of their community, especially places that like mine that really we do everything we can to keep it local. We buy from local farmers, local markets, local producers. We do work with a food truck, and we do buy some shit from Sam's Club. I'm not going to front, but we do everything we can to keep it local. We do everything we can to keep it handcrafted. So we're making real fucking food, and we're making it with intention. People don't really 100%, I don't think, understand what we're trying to do with our restaurant. I just started using words like chef driven a couple years ago because I realized I was the weirdo, and to me, that's just how food was made. Like, you didn't question it. And to everyone else, that's not the case, you know? And, if I wanted to make good money in this area, I'd just sell hot dogs. You know, and I'm not above selling or eating hot dogs. I love a good hot dog, but I had to start trying to use words like chef driven, curated, even though I hate the word boutique, like, to try to get people to understand what we're doing. And to understand the value of it. Like, yes, eating fills your belly, it sates you, but real food does so much more than that. It is an experience, and you come away from that with like a whole new outlook on your day, on your life. You know, you can, when people bite into my food and they're like, oh fuck, like, yes, you got it. You just got it.
That's it. And, you know, it's for me, and I'm with you, it's the journey of that plate, right? You know, because I came from a scratch kitchen as well, restaurant here in Houston, and we always would talk about the journey of the perfect plate, and it's when you see it in that rare form to finally what it's going to be when it goes out to that table and everything that went involved to make that dish what it is. To me, that was the take home, and like you said, to see the reaction of someone when they bite into it, or just the time when they see it placed in front of them, right? It's that. You know, we used to call it that Instagram photo moment, right? When everyone's pulling out their phones to take a picture of it.
And what a crazy world we live in now, where to be a chef, you also have to be a social media mogul.
Yeah,
you've got to, and it's great. I'm gifted that I have some skills in that area as well, because it's necessary. You can't do the kind of food that I'm talking about if you can't get in front of people and talk about it. You know, that's the whole reason behind the YouTube channel, is to tell these stories of this food and where it comes from, and get it out to people that haven't had the chance to taste it. And they can see it, and they can engage in that food and that quality food without having been here yet. And then hopefully that lights a fire, like, I'm going to go.
Maybe you should do like bus runs from other places, like just rent a bus and just like paint your logo on the side, and then just start picking people up in parking lots, like at Applebee's. Start picking them up at Applebee's.
Right.
Come to Wheeling. Right? Eat some actual food that you're going to want to take pictures of. You know, like no one's taking pictures of like pre-chopped tomatoes at Applebee's, right?
It's heartbreaking. And again, like, I get it. I understand. I don't want to throw shade, but I'm going to a little bit, you know, because it's just, fuck. If I could go back and do it all over again, I may have opened a food truck instead of opening a brick and mortar.
Yeah.
But, you know, here we are.
You could do pop-ups though, I guess, right?
Yeah. And I've done a lot of that sort of thing for a long time, until recently with my new added jobs, that finding the farm to table dinners was a big part of it. And, you know, I would try to do at least one event a month and somewhere different. And, even now with the state parks and with the food and farm, I'm getting that brand out. I'm getting that name out. And I really feel in my gut that the YouTube part of all this is going to be instrumental in what I'm trying to accomplish.
I think that there is a personal component to what you're doing, that it has to be you, right? With all of these things that we've talked about, when it has to be you because you are the face of that brand, you know, it's a lot of pressure.
You know, coming up in the kitchen, foodie was like a bad word. Like, you didn't want foodies around. But, you know, now that I own a business and I have to think a little bit more differently than who's going to make my night on the line miserable, you know, foodies are great because they give a shit. They're invested in learning more. They want to hear your story. They want to eat good food. They want to learn more. And that's fantastic. You know, so let's bolster them, and they can proselytize to the people that don't know any better, and maybe bring some more folks over, bring them over from McDonald's.
But the internet has done that weird thing where it's created that culture of people who, build loyalty around themselves and then help build loyalty around you. There is good there, although it is mostly evil. I think in your case, honestly, having grown up in small towns, there are so many limitations that are on a smaller community. Now here you are trying to build a community.
Right.
You're the face of West Virginia as far as I'm concerned. So I mean, it's incredible how far your journey has taken you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I definitely, want to make sure the record's set straight. I'm way more vigilante than superhero. and I am totally okay with learning the dark side of the force to do some good things. I feel like that's a strong point for me. I believe that if I do it right, everything else is going to come. So I don't focus on that stuff, but I'll leverage anything I can. I mean, I've got nothing for resources. Like I grew up on a dairy farm, so like I've bootstrapped everything that I've done, and I will take any advantage I can get to clamber up that cliff a little bit more.
You're not afraid. Like I said earlier, you bet on yourself, and you believe in it. And so that's the key to this, and it shows in your work, and it shows in your success. So kudos to you, man. Good job.
We've got a lot of really talented folks in our state doing some really great things. And it's everyone's on board. Like, everyone is very much a rising tide raises all ships mentality.
Nice.
Here in Wheeling and in West Virginia as a whole. And that's one of the great things about growing up in a small community or living in a small community is, we're all each other's neighbors, and we can work together. And, I've been able to make a much bigger splash being in a smaller pond than if I had relocated to Pittsburgh or Austin or New York. It's still important to me to travel. I don't travel as much as I used to. I don't have that opportunity, and that's totally okay. But being intentional with those travels and having the opportunity to build something with them is still, I think, something that's on the table.
Absolutely. All right. So once again, everywhere, but especially on YouTube, you can find Matt Welsh, the Vagabond Chef. So look him up on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and he's going to be pushing out videos. They're absolutely stunning and really fun to watch. He's a fun guy, and I am so grateful that he agreed to do the show with us today. So thank you, Matt, again for joining us.
Thanks, Matt. We appreciate it, Chef.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was a lot of fun, and I'd love to keep talking to y'all. I wish you all the best with what you're doing, and I thank you for shining the light on the people that are working hard in our industry. I really appreciate you letting me come on today.
Thank you so much for listening. And now for the shameless plug. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider buying us a $5 round or becoming a monthly supporter by visiting turnburn.co, selecting support, and clicking the Buy Us a Beer button.
Please also stay tuned for podcast updates by subscribing to our newsletter at turnburn.co and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Turn Burn Show. Thanks again for joining us, and stay out of the weeds.